Put your hands together for literally one of my best friends, Dan Sheehan, call sign Sheehan. 7 o'clock, brother.
Good evening, ladies and gents. Thank you very much. Am I too loud or not loud enough?
A little louder.
A little louder? All right, how about that?
That's better.
Set up for somebody slightly taller than I am. Hot seating the aircraft after him. My intent here tonight, ladies and gents, first say thanks for everything that the Wounded Warrior Patrol has done for us, bringing us out here. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak and hopefully share a couple of my experiences. Not so much from combat, but more the after effects of my experiences in combat and some of the things that I figured out along the 3 years it took me to write this. My hope is that I can do about 20 minutes. I'm going to start my clock now, and then open up to for any and all questions, either about the book, about things I gloss over here, or about your own experiences and things that maybe don't sound right, and we can chat about it and go from there. And then afterwards, we've got some books in the back. I know Ian took a bunch of names for an order, but I do have extra books as well, and be flattered if you would like me to sign them for you. I'll be right back there. So anyhow, what I'm going to talk about tonight is all gained through the benefit of hindsight. Don't imagine that I went through any of these experiences with any sort of self-awareness that allowed me to process while it happened. None of this got processed while it happened. Everything got stuffed away, compartmentalized, with honestly never had an intention to open up those boxes again. They were in my past, and there was no need to go back there as far as I was concerned. So as Ian mentioned, I was able to do. I still consider myself lucky enough to have been on the invasion force into Iraq in 2003. Our squadron got tasked with taking out some of the border observation posts right before the ground assault commenced. And I got lucky enough to be in a position where I was at the top of my game in training, had 1,200 hours of flight time under my belt, several deployments, and now I was actually in a position to do it for real. And it was a life-changing experience, as the rest of the veterans know, in here as well. It was a good tour. It was short, it was quick, it ended with basically a declaration of victory, and our squadron was the first one that came home less than a month, well, about a month after the Saddam regime fell. And we came home to parties, to medals, to dudes buying us beer and shaking our hands. And that was, it was amazing. There's no real other way to put that. I came home and hit the ground running. I was ready to tackle life and move forward. And I intended with all my heart to do that. And I had not been hit. I had not been, I considered myself as whole as I had been when I left. And so I pushed forward. Now this is where the hindsight comes in. What I was experiencing this time was actually that there was a physiological after effect of combat. And this is a short duration. Nothing like 13 months or 26 months, however many you gentlemen did in Vietnam. This was 3 weeks. So, there were some intense things there, but this is not long duration. And like everybody else, I usually measure myself against what others have done before me. I said, well, I must be fine because my experiences were nowhere near theirs in terms of duration, fatigue, and overall trauma. I really figured I had it pretty good. So, ended up with the physiological after effects. Basically, as long as I was engaged, as long as I was at work, still flying, or otherwise engaged as a Marine officer, I was fine. I might be a little bit short, a little curt here and there, but I was engaged and I was moving forward and I was able to channel that energy. It was when I came home at night. It was when I walked into our apartment, I'm going to share with my then fiance, Lena. Walked in there and it was quiet, it was welcoming, it was warm, and I was miserable. I could not sit still. I figured, okay, now's the time to sit down and relax, watch some TV, and have a nice conversation, and we'll have dinner and we'll go to bed. Hey, sounds perfect. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit still, couldn't maintain a line of communication that didn't go down the road of short, curt responses, and my mind wandering places where I didn't want it to go. Constantly harnessed it, got it back in, but the knee would start to shake. Couldn't sit on the couch anymore, so I'd get up and then walk around. As this developed, I didn't suffer this easily. I said, well, this is stupid. Why am I so amped up? I should just have a drink. And so I started to come home from work, and before I'd even take my uniform blouse off, pour myself a drink. No harm, no foul. Relax, calm down. I was able to maintain a nice conversation with my wife, and I felt as well balanced as I ever had been for a time. And then that first drink, well, that one didn't quite do the whole job. So a little bit later, I have another one. About halfway through that drink, it's about time I'm getting into my cups, let's just say that. And but it's time to go to bed. So I figure I'm hiding it from myself and hiding it from Lena. Have that second drink, finish it off, go to bed, wake up the next day, do it again. This was a slippery slope. And as I see some nodding heads in here, folks know where I'm going with this. It's a road that leads one place. And I didn't see it at the time. I was lucky enough that my wife now, fiance at the time, did. And she called me on it. And she basically laid it out. I love you, I want to marry you, but I'm not going to do it until you figure out what's going on. Until you stop what you're doing. And that was kind of ice water down the back. So I did. I stopped drinking like that. I did not go, yes, I've got something going on, I need to go back and figure it out. No, because I'm not this guy. No, that's not me. So I quit drinking like that. And luckily she caught me early enough in that experience that that was easy to do. And had that gone on longer, it would not have been. Now, this being said, I still needed to dissipate that energy somehow, and this is where the healthy response came in. I got lucky again and stumbled on spearfishing and freediving. We were in California at the time, lived off in Encinitas and Del Mar, and we were able to get out in the ocean pretty much anytime I wanted to. Spearfishing answered a need that I didn't know I had. And this was again, the hindsight coming into play, spending a lot of time on the cusp of fight or flight, right underneath that threshold, just waiting for something to kick me off, and I wanted something to kick me off, believe me, because that's where the release came in. And if somebody could get me mad, oh boy, did that ever feel good, because that for that time, that release happened. Well, what spearfishing did for me, and freediving, is I knew without a shadow of a doubt when I was in the ocean that I was no longer at the top of the food chain. There are some big things out there, and I look like a SEAL, not a big Navy guy, but one of those little dudes. And I was the slowest SEAL out there swimming, so yeah, I knew where that could go. So that tingling, that knowledge of what could be just outside the murk was powerfully addictive, and when I look at it in hindsight, that was my methadone to the heroin of combat. The intensity of my combat experiences were such that I could not walk away from them, and my body continued feeding off of that. It was when I got in the water, is when I got into an environment where being on that cusp of fight or flight, having that tingle was appropriate, and my energy level to feed into that was appropriate. And so I could stay there, I could use up those neurotransmitters and everything else that was going on in my brain, kind of the runaway processes that were still there. I could use that energy in a manner that was healthy and productive, because Lena likes lobsters. And so I was able to use it. When I came out of the water after 4 or 5, 6 hours, not only was I hypothermic, but I was calm. My brain was calm. And it started out, I'd be calm for about an hour, and then it would come back. Over time, the more I did it, the more I enjoyed it, the better I got, the longer I could stay underneath, and the rest, the longer that calm stayed with me. And it got to the point where I could go diving and then be calm, what most folks would consider normal, for the rest of the day. And that was the beginning of how I coped with the physiological after effects. And in time, those processes shut down. They did go back to normal, and they did, and no longer do I have to go diving. I still want to, but I don't have to. And I'll touch on this briefly here, but I'll close with it again. For those of you in the room who are skiing for the first time or snowboarding for the first time, think about, you don't have to tell anyone, think about if you feel a little bit calmer after you come off the slopes than you did, I don't know, for the last 5 years. These sorts of experiences tend to give our brains time to shut down, and those runaway processes that are going on in the background, the memories, the loops, the things you keep coming back to, it takes a break when you're focusing on something that is a heck of a lot of fun, but it also can be very dangerous. And if you notice when you come off the slopes that you're calm, that's a good thing. And harness it, do it more, because you're giving your brain rest and you're allowing it to shut down those processes over time. The more you do it, the better you'll feel. So, to keep on track, the physiological after effects were very loud. They were boisterous. They were in your face. You could look at me and see it. There was something else going on, something else that was bothering me, but it was a much lower frequency, much lower visibility. It was something that only came out usually when I was alone, when it would manifest itself in the beginning. And I didn't recognize it until the loud, boisterous physiological effects were gone. Then I could start picking up on some of these undercurrents and really starting to wonder what is going on with what else is this? What is this? It was deeper. It was more fundamentally disturbing for me in my image of myself. So I didn't like it. I didn't want it there. So I did what I did with anything I didn't like. I stuffed it in a box and put it in the back of my head and said, "Leave me alone, and I'm fine." And that was the "I'm fine. Don't talk to me about this. There's nothing bothering me. Drive forward." That worked for a time, but all I was doing was tamping down pressure. I was putting a lid on a pressure cooker, and emotions and reactions and responses that I had to various events, and this is coming after my second combat tour now, had built up. The pressures had built up, and they got to the point where it only took, where I would try to meter out just a little bit of anger, or just a little bit of sentiment. And instead of a little bit coming out, a whole bunch would pop out. The top of the salt shaker would come off, and everything else would pour out behind it. Or a little bit of water would come out of the faucet, and then there's a torrent. So I got to the point where I was really not able to trust my emotional responses. So I shut them down. I don't want to be surprised by what comes out. I don't want people to look at me if I'm throwing a fit somewhere over nothing, over something that's very small. These sorts of things bothered me to the point where I would prefer not to emit any emotional responses than to be surprised and destabilized by ones that were inappropriate in either form or intensity. And so I tried to block them away, tried to stuff them down. And I was able to do that for a while, stuff things away. But what I was doing was I was clamping that pressure lid down tighter on that pressure cooker. Again, this is all hindsight. I didn't know this at the time. And it came to a head when I got a phone call 5 years after my last combat tour. I got a phone call one morning from my dad. I was taking care of my kids now. I was a stay-at-home father with one child, my son at the time. And phone rings early one morning. It's my dad saying that Dave had a crash in Afghanistan. He's a Cobra driver as well. And he's okay. He's in the hospital, burns, fractured back. but he's okay. That's what my conscious mind picked up on. But whatever protective mechanism I built in my own head to hide emotions and stuff them away just dissolved. It was gone like that, and I was reacting as if he was dead. And it wasn't just that I reacted as if he was dead. A torrent of emotions came out that had been sequestered for a long time, and it was mental pus coming out. It was really pretty uncomfortable to go through, and it really disturbed me because I didn't expect it anywhere. Didn't expect it to come out, and yet there it was. So I stuffed that away. That happened, got back on my feet after a couple minutes, and was no longer able to lie to myself and say, I'm good, I'm fine, there's nothing bothering me. Now I knew without a doubt something was bothering me, and I had a choice to make. I either continue on the road I'm on, wall it back up, stuff it away, and promise myself that it will never happen again, or I better pull it out and I better figure it out. I wasn't about to do that. I started building that wall again, started pushing it back in there. And I had luck factors in a lot. I had a lucky moment when I watched my son, just caught him at one of those moments that happen throughout the day. Sometimes you pick up on him, sometimes you don't. But he's 20 months old, and he was, at one point, I was in a conversation with my wife. I looked down, and he's standing there in the exact mirror image of how I'm standing. Arms crossed. I wasn't sucking my thumb then, but leaning against the wall, and he's leaning against the wall, sucking his thumb, looking up at me. And it was like a thunder shot. It was like, he's gonna do what I do, regardless of whether it's good, bad, healthy or unhealthy. He's gonna mirror his own what he thinks he should be off of how I act. And it was at that point where my concept of myself as a strong man being made stronger by hiding these, by stuffing this stuff away, not going back to it. That was where my concept of strength shifted. And it was no longer strong for me to hide from these events and from this emotional turmoil, really, that was going on. It was actually cowardice of me to continue hiding from it, because I was running the risk of damaging my son's emotional development and my soon-to-be-born daughter. It became, the concept shifted in my head, and it became more symbolic of strength to start weeding through those boxes and figure out what was going on. That's when the writing process began for me. I started writing the next day. What I ended up pulling out of those boxes, and it's absolutely impossible for me to sit down at that time and go, okay, on this day I did that, and that's how I felt about that. This day I did that, and I had to rebuild these events, and over 10 drafts, what it took me to get the book to where it is now. It started very flat, and just a report that could go into the intel officer and be filed away. Devoid of emotional attachment, any emotional tags. It took me a long time to go through those events, rebuilding them from my gun camera footage, from my aircraft, and also my journal and my co-pilot's journal from that time, when I was able to rebuild the events. And I found out that what I had done in the heat of the moment, in various instances, I had immediately compartmentalized any emotional responses to the stressful situations as they developed. You know, you have to do that. That's compartmentalization. That's healthy. That's exactly what you have to do in combat or any stressful situation to begin with. You have to put away your own thoughts and emotions and fears and concerns and focus on the job at hand, because lives are depending on you. What changes about that, though, is that at the end, when you no longer have to compartmentalize, you have a new need, you have a new requirement, and that is to decompartmentalize, to pull those things out. Because what I found was that I could compartmentalize the emotions very well. I could have friends get killed, I could kill people, and I could see things, just fantastically terrifying things occurring around me, and put them away. and drive on and do my job, and I was good at that. But what I figured out after the fact was that what I had done had not reduced any of the powerful emotional reactions that I was experiencing from that. It still happened. They were still there. All I had done by compartmentalizing them was tear them away from the events that gave them birth. So those powerful emotions were now bouncing around like pinballs, and they would scoot out at various times, random times. And that's where the destabilizing emotional responses came from my end of things. And that's where I had to start clamping down and going cold in order to keep them from coming out. Didn't understand it at the time, came with clarity later. As I started pulling these events out and writing about them, and actually writing about my emotional responses as they occurred, funny thing happened. The pressure started to dissipate. Those emotions now got tied in the timeline of my life in my head. They got reattached to the events that gave them birth. And in doing so, put them in their appropriate places. I can go back there. I can mentally put myself back in various situations, and I'll get amped up again. But when I leave that, when I stop thinking about it, when I move on to the next thought, the emotions are gone as well. They dissipate normally. But I could have only come to that by getting them out to a position where I could understand them and allow myself to feel how I should have felt, or I won't say should, because like I said, compartmentalization is a very important aspect of what we do. But as a normal, healthy human being, you have to experience those emotions at some point. Whether you agree to it or not, they're coming out. So you might as well take advantage of this and go ahead and let them come out. Go back and find them yourself. Okay, and again, already busted it, 21 minutes. So just about done. But to back it off again, for the Wounded Warrior Patrol, thank you very much for bringing us out here. And I really hope that some of the veterans here were able to achieve some semblance of calm. Maybe not on the slope when you're sliding and screaming towards a tree, but afterwards, when you came back here, when you relaxed, when you saw your wife, when you saw your kids, and you were actually living again, and you were able to engage with each other on levels that may have been missing for some time. Recognize it. Thank these ladies and gentlemen for their time, money, and energy putting it together for us. We truly do appreciate it. At this point, I'd like to open up for any questions you may have, and at the end of it, my wife's going to take care of the kids after this, so I can sit in the back and sign books and hang out and chat. But at this point, please, any questions? Nothing's off the table.